Okay, resetters, we got to talk about hormonal belly fat. I'm watching your comments. I get that belly fat's like the part of your body that you hate the most. So we've got to talk about where we can determine if it's hormonal, and if it is hormonal, how do we get rid of it? And this also, by the way, is for men and women, because we can get, and you'll hear in a moment, some really very specific hormones that accumulate on the belly. And in men, it's very prevalent. So I want to talk about that here. And so in this video, let's dive in. I want to go through, I've got 3 major tips for you. Okay, here's the first thing I want you to realize is that when your body is storing fat, all it's doing is storing excess. So if you haven't heard me say that, I really want you to take this in, think about it. All fat is excess. Your body didn't know where to put it, didn't know how to use it, so it stored it as fat. Well, in the belly, it's excess of 2 specific hormones, estrogen and cortisol. Here's the way to look at that. Why would it store estrogen there? And when we talk about estrogen dominance, especially for those of you, especially the women that are younger, but estrogen storage also happens to men in the belly. Why would we have more estrogen than we need? Let's answer that question. And the reason is because estrogen disruptors, mimickers, things that your cells think are estrogen are everywhere. They're everywhere. And it's a crime, because literally it could be something you're putting on your skin, on your hair. It could be something you're drinking. It could be something sprayed on your food. And when your body doesn't know what to do with it, it categorizes it, and it's like, oh, this appears to look like estrogen. So it starts to store it in the belly. So men, I want to talk to you for a moment, because a lot of that belly fat that we see men get, that's the estrogens that are in something like beer. You know, beer is really interesting because it creates has that glutinous bloating that we see with a lot of men, but it also is an endocrine disruptor. So it'll pad and give you extra fat around your belly. It's also the man boobs. That is estrogen. And it means that you're getting exposed to too many estrogen mimickers, but it also can be your beauty products. And I know as men, you might be like, well, what do you mean? I don't really have that many beauty products. But think about everything you put on your skin. Think about what you wash your clothes in. All of that can end up getting absorbed through your skin, and then your body has to do something with it, and so it stores it as fat. The second hormone that gets stored there is cortisol. Now, I want to speak to those of you that are really stressed out for a second. I know, and you're going to see threads, especially in my current videos here on YouTube. You're going to see a lot of threads where I'm just bringing stress in and into the conversation and giving you as many ideas of where stress is a hurdle and an obstacle for you with your health. So I want to make sure that you're addressing cortisol. And one of the things that I know for my own self, because I'm working on stress all the time, is that if I start to feel like I'm accumulating fat around my belly, I'm like, stress has gone up. I need to the cortisol doesn't have anywhere to go. Belly fat specifically is this toxic estrogen, and it's too much cortisol. They're indicators of those 2 things, and you have a lot of control. You have a lot that you can do. So let's dive into those. First is you get rid of the estrogen mimickers. That means you got to look at your beauty products. You got to look at the chemicals in your food. You got to look at the chemicals in your even in your kitchen, your laundry detergents. Like, you need to do a chemical overload and take yourself on a chemical elimination diet. So one of the things that I see where there is an incongruency for a lot of people is they sit over here and complain because they're not seeing that their belly fat's going down, but then did they take a day? It may take you a day to go through and scan everything in your house and make sure you don't have estrogen mimickers. One of the stories I always remember in my clinic was that a woman named Lanny went in for a routine mammogram at 40. She was a patient of mine. She was a friend of mine. Every single book I ever write, you will see her name in there. She was that impactful to my life. And one of the things that I remember Lanny telling me was that the day she got the diagnosis, she went from the doctor's office she got this horrible diagnosis, and she went straight home and she scanned everything. She cleaned her house from head to toe. She researched the heck out of what got her breast cancer in the first place, and estrogen mimickers was a big part of that. That's a why. So you can't sit in a place where you're like, oh, I wish I would lose weight. I wish my belly fat would go down, and not dive in deep into what in your world is an estrogen mimicker that's creating this extra fat to be there. Okay, the second thing that I want you to think about is that if this is cortisol that gets stored down here, then how do we use cortisol so it's not stored? And this is where we can move our body. So this is anytime, and here's something, those of you that are dedicated to this topic, and put it in the notes if you're dedicated, because it's one thing to watch a YouTube video and be like, oh, this is entertaining. Yeah, I should probably do that. And it's another thing to have a fierce intention about going after your health and making sure you are loving the body you live in, which I think should be the ultimate goal. You should love the body you live in. So it could look as simple as you're sitting at your desk at work, somebody comes in, yells something at you, or gives you a workload, and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle all of this? And cortisol comes surging in your body. The worst thing you can do is sit there and stay there. It's the worst thing you can do. Get up and move. Even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. During the pandemic, oh my gosh, I think I walked 10 times a day. Every time I had a stressful thought, I was like, whoop, time to go. I got to go walk. Even to this day, I walk 3 to 4 times a day. And normally it's around stressful. Like if I get off a podcast interview, I'm tired. If I go to my email and I'm like, oh my God, I'm overloaded, I'll go for a walk first so that I'm always using cortisol. I'm not storing it. Okay, I got to interrupt this video because I have a free guide for you so you can master fasting. It's called A Beginner's Guide to a Fasting Lifestyle. And all you've got to do is click here and you can jump right in. Third way. And this one I've talked a lot about, but I'm not sure if I put it in this context. And that is that a lot of you that are fasting, you need to open up your detox pathways. So what does that mean? It means that you have a lot of lymph that is being drained out of certain organs. So like, the liver has the common bile duct and the gallbladder, and there's a whole lymph system around that drains into the small intestine, and then the small intestine drains those toxins into the large intestine, and then out through your stools it goes. So sometimes when things are accumulated around our belly, it can be a sign that that drainage system isn't happening. A really good way to understand where your drainage is at is just feel above your clavicle. Is it puffy or is it an indentation? That should be an indentation. What about under your arm? I've talked a lot about that. Do you have a pit or a puff? If it's a pit right underneath the arm, that's great. If it's a puff and it has like a mushy feeling to it, that's stagnant lymph. So we've got to get the lymph flowing, but if it stays in the abdomen, then it's going to create more of those toxins accumulating around your abdomen. So make sure you're having a daily bowel movement. If you're not doing that, please do that. Make sure that happens. Then more greens, because greens are fiber. They're going to help support a healthy microbiome in your gut. They're going to help with bowel movements. So let's do that. Also, magnesium can be really great for if you're constipated at all to get the stools out of you. A loofah. I've talked about this before, but if you didn't see that video, in my shower is a loofah. And they're like a sponge-like thing, and I sponge all my detox pathways under my arms, my abs, down my thoracic area, right above my clavicle, my inguinal area, my abdomen. Make sure that I'm always opening those pores up so that toxins can get out of there. And then another one that's a really cool hack. This is like cutting edge hack, which is castor oil. When you go to bed at night, put some castor oil on your belly, and it opens up and dilates and lets your body be able to mobilize those toxins. But we've got to stop the estrogen mimickers. We've got to move when stress hits us, and we've got to open up our pathways. The last part I will say, and of course this is my jam, which is fasting. That fasting lifestyle, that variation in and out of different fasts is really, really critical for belly fat and for mobilizing and breaking down estrogen and cortisol. So remember that the pulsing in and out of different fasts, sometimes those can increase oxytocin. If we do them just lightly, you get a little dopamine rush, and dopamine and oxytocin go hand in hand. And so oxytocin will calm cortisol down. We also know that when you're building a fasting lifestyle, that a lot of times you can dip in and you can start to go after breaking down some of that fat, and you will get these estrogen mimickers will start to unwind themselves. If you are listening to this and you're like, oh, I think I have a lot of estrogen mimickers that have accumulated around my belly, make sure when you fast, you take activated charcoal, something in the gut that's going to absorb to those estrogen mimickers that might be released as the fat is burned. So we don't want them recirculating, going up into your brain. So my favorite is a product called Bind. It's always been my go-to for activated charcoal. We'll leave the link in the notes here so you can see it. Okay, if you loved this video, you're gonna wanna check out the next video of my food series. 5 foods that will sabotage weight loss. And they're gonna surprise you. These are ones that you're probably doing thinking they're helping you lose weight.